Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In one of my other videos, a lot of people requested I do more heuristics type videos. So I figured I would do one here, a cold 4-bet spot. I'm going to show you like some basic heuristics that I might have, but then some of the things that we should really be thinking about when we implement them. And I've picked this example, this very extreme example deliberately, to show you guys basically what we should be thinking about. So if you see on the underneath my webcam here, you will see I have this spot. It's basically a cold 4-bet pot where I'm either cutoff versus button, cutoff or button versus early position, so under the gun hijack open, and either a hijack or a cutoff cold 4-bet. So it could be under the gun open, as you see here, hijack 3-bet. You can see this was arranged as opposed to 3-bet in theory, and then cold 4-bet. I haven't really done a lot of work on these lines because what should be happening is you should face a lot of check raising in the spot. But if you ever get into the spot, people tend to not really check raise that much, and it's a very rare spot. People tend to not even put that much effort into studying it. And there's a very good reason why people do that. It's very rare. It's very niche, and the ranges people have don't often get built in the way that they are in theory. So a lot of the times these spots don't even occur. But like, let's say hypothetically the spot does occur. Hijack has to, first of all, think I'm going to 3-bet these hands at a mixed frequency in this formation. Not everybody does that, especially in low stakes. And then when you cold 4-bet, you have to think, I want to have a little bit of jacks, a little bit of tens, a little bit of like a tiny bit of these hands, a little bit of ace 5, ace jack, a little bit of king queen. And then hijack has to come here and be like, I want to sometimes flat my aces, sometimes flat my kings. Jacks doesn't want a pure call, but we want to have a little bit of this, and then all of these like 9s, 8s, 8 suited connectors that we decided to 3-bet, they have to call in this node. Otherwise, we're wasting our time basically. So like we suddenly got down this rabbit hole, and it doesn't really matter what the flop is. We've just got there, and then suddenly now we have to play post flop, and people's ranges have to look something like this. What you might find is in reality, this is probably more likely what a human's range would probably look like in this spot. But like it might just look something like this, and even then it might not. Like most of the time people are just going to be like queens plus, ace queen suited plus, and then sometimes they'll find some of the other hands. Then you have a completely new situation. Completely new set of circumstances. Which is why when it comes to building heuristics, it's just good to like keep it simple and like kind of try to have a game plan and like try to understand ranges. And the reason I came up with these heuristics, we're just generally, we're either going to bet 10% or 25% on every board, is because for the most part the size in the solver would pick would be 25% or 50%, but you can generally do this with 25%. You generally just get to bet more overall. And then the OOP player is supposed to be very aggressive. So let's just see if I'm going to reveal how much the OOP is meant to check raise on average. This is just completely solved situation. It's going to be about, on every board, it's going to be about a 40% fold frequency and about a 16% check raise frequency. Now imagine if we range bet every board 25%, this check raise frequency is going to, like the OOP's max exploit strategy, is going to be check raising above 20% for sure, maybe as high as 30%, but certainly between 20 and 25%. That is going to be the OOP's max exploit strategy. And yeah, folding about 40%. The folding frequency doesn't change a huge amount. What happens is, I mean, it does, obviously they fold less, but like what happens is the check raising frequency just massively increases, and people are very, very uncomfortable check raising in 4-bet pots because they're just terrified about losing to aces. And when we have this uncertainty, of knowing that their range, cold 4-bet range, you know, doesn't look like this, but looks, you know, like this, or maybe even doesn't even look like this, doesn't even have these hands. When we have this like big uncertainty, or even it's just aces and kings and not even ace king, like we just don't know a lot of the time versus our opponents. It's very, very uncomfortable for people to start check raising super aggressively in these spots. So when I built my heuristics here, it was basically under the assumption that most people aren't really, really deeply studied in the spot to the point where they're like pretty comfortable doing like small check raises. They're like trying to like pressure a certain part of your range, you know. And this is just the flop. We haven't even talked about what happens when we go on when we go versus turn call. You notice this whole bit versus check raise. I haven't even bothered to fill in because it's just kind of like I'll just wing it here. It's just like such a rare spot, you know. 10 times a day I'm going to be focusing on like 100 other spots, and then maybe once a week I might find a spot, and we've just had the spot. Now I'll just explain it. We're range betting for the most part, and then there's this range check on these like connected high card boards. This is basically where only queen to 9 makes a straight. What this is these kind of boards, you'll find that like there's like quite a pattern here, and let's just pick one of the example ones. So queen to 9 makes a straight, so let's just try jack 10 9, right? This board is quite unique because you see OOP start to have leads. Now the reason it has leads is like king queen is part of hijack range, queens and jacks and 10s part of hijack range. Now what you might see in reality, if we go back to this range, is from OOP's perspective, look how much bigger part of range queens, jacks and 10s are. And like I've even put king queen in here like a little bit more, and then there's even like ace queen. So if you look at a board like queen jack 9 and you face this range here, so let's just put like jack 10 9, sorry, in here with the same range. Yeah, it's just pure range leading. And if we can start to understand this sort of dynamic around, I would call it like a weak range build, but in reality, is it a weak range or is it just not how a solver would build ranges? That's a good question. You can think about that one, and you tell me your thoughts in the comments. But I call it a weak range construction rather than a solved range construction. But you see how much queens, jacks and 10s, these are just like the absolute fundamental backbone of the OOP strategy here. So what it does on these like jack 10 9 boards is cutoff would be insane to range bet these boards. Absolutely insane. Like if you range bet these boards, like, and they're not donking like 95% of their range, you're going to be in big trouble, as Mourinho says. Like, you're meant to range check basically. This is never going to be picked, but like, what's the point? Like, look at this equity. Look, it's 42% for imposition, and people just like range bet these balls. And this is like where we talk about range construction, because in the solver it's like, okay, hijack can still lead, but like, cutoff still has an equity advantage. But if we're just shifting queens, jacks, 10s into pure calls, a bit of king queen is in there, you know, just a little bit, you know, 9s is in there just a little bit. Like your aces and your kings are just worth so much less. Like just worth so much less. And like this is why, simplification wise, we just want to check on these boards. There are no other actual boards like this, because when we look at OOP's range in this weak range simulation, there's not that many other boards where it just hits so hard on their sets, and like they just have barely anything else. So it's just like, and even like the low connected boards that are usually quite bad for the pre-flop raiser, they're like pretty good in reality in 4-bet pots. Like the OOP player just doesn't interact with them at all. Now let's just train some heuristics. We're not even thinking about the turn, we're just like, okay, we have our strategy in there, we've done some work, we thought a little bit about, you know, what Paul might be doing differently, and we've made a simple strategy to change it. So let's just go through Jack 8-4. This is not one of our range check boards, so just bet range. You see in theory it's like got that tick mark. I'm not like bothered whether we have the tick mark or not. It's always kind of encouraging though. Here, this board, I know it's like a dry board. It's going to be like bet 50 or 25 in theory, but like that's our strategy. Bet 25. Next hand, again same kind of board. Bet 25. Again, most of these spots are going to be bet 50, bet 25. This one, bet 25. By the way, 6-5 suited cold 4-bet versus hijack. Just do you see this? Do you see this? King 10-4. But like, let's think a little bit now about OOP interaction here. What it should look like in theory, what it should look like versus a weak range, or like maybe like what a 25 and L player might build their range like, who's not a fish. Obviously, a fish can be a bit differently. So what was like queens, jacks, tens, huge part of their range. Maybe a little bit of ace king, a little bit of like nines, these kind of hands. Bet 25, what are we making fold here? What's supposed to fold? And these are like kind of more deep, interesting questions. So once you start doing this, like, it makes our turn and river decision like a bit differently. So this is more like, now we're trying to expand our knowledge to later in the hand. So we're not accounting for a weak range, but what is 25% supposed to fold in theory? All of these hands, and like these hands, and queens and jacks. What if they're not folding queens or jacks? Well, they're not gonna fold them on the flop, but they're not gonna raise them on the flop. So let's, you know, start bluffing on the turn, which would bring me to the turn heuristic. I don't know how like clear that is to people, but essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking for bricks. Basically, we're not focusing on these texture changing boards because we're just going to figure that shit out as we go. We're just going to like value bet like top pair, top kicker, which is like basically going to be just like ace queen, ace king, king, excuse me, ace king, ace queen, and then just everything else, and then just anything we think is showdown value, we're just going to check and try and take to showdown. It's very, very basic. There's nothing super advanced here. So this is very text changing. Let's think about their range in this spot. Reality range. Well, what were we making fold on the flop? Like, obviously we're going to make like tons and tons of like these missed hands fold, but also we're supposed to fold things like jacks. Jacks is supposed to fold on the flop. Queens are supposed to fold on the flop. So what's their range in a spot like this? It's going to be like some of these like ace x spade hands, but they also might just shove the flop or raise the flop. It's going to be like tens. It's going to be like ace king. It's going to be like ace queen. It's going to be like ace jack. Yeah, and it's just going to be like maybe some like 9-8 type hands. These things. So like, I think it's kind of dynamic texture. Would it make sense to bet here for value? Potentially. That's a good question. Like, king queen is going to be in their range, so I think I would check this. You can see it's mixed in theory, but like if we're just thinking about their range in these spots, that's like where we really get the value from our heuristics. It's like here, well, now we've made top pair, top kicker. It's not a brick turn in the sense of the ranges. We've definitely improved part of our range here, but like, it's very simple to follow though. Oh, we has hand, we bet. It's like as simple as that. Maybe we could even size up. This one, not a brick turn, is a mono board. We obviously have a straight, so we have a value hand. Unless they have way loads of flushes. Wait, how many flushes do they have here? Ace, queen of spades. And then what else do they have? They'll have maybe some slow played queens, some slow played jacks. They probably don't have tens because it's the 10 of spades, so we don't need to worry about it. So tens is like unlikely. Then there's like ace queen, and then it's like maybe there's a little bit of ace jack here. maybe there's a bit of like king queen here. There's just, you know, maybe there's like some suited connector flushes depending on how they build their range. But like, you know, we have a straight. There's plenty of hands we beat with value betting. Do we want to use 50 or 25? I just stuck B30. It doesn't really matter. It makes more sense to me intuitively, but it doesn't, like the EV difference here doesn't really matter. It's about what is their range. So here we have like a low hand. This is a bit more interesting. It's kind of just a brick. There's very little hands in their range, so it's like, what is their range supposed to look like on the flop? It's supposed to have like some decent amount of like ace. They're probably meant to be calling of like ace queen of diamonds, you know, king queen of diamonds, these kind of hands. You know, but they're going to have like nines, tens, jacks, queens here. They might raise them on the flop, they might not, but they're going to have them. You know, and then just like some of these suited ace-x. So really, the next question is, here is, do we try and, we could bet, and like we might get called by like some flush draws, or they might jam their flush draws on the turn, we don't know. Or we could check and try and take our hand to showdown, try and beat ace queen of hearts, try and beat ace queen of spades, you know, these kind of hands. So this is really like, I don't want to pressure that range of hands like queens, jacks, tens, nines, etc. Or do you want to check and take our hand to showdown? This is a very good question. I'll just click check for now, but I think both options are correct. Tens. So now the queen comes. We don't have top pair, top kicker. We definitely would win to beat hands like nines. We're going to lose to like ace queen of hearts. Ace queen of exists, but we're losing to jacks. Do we bet this to try and make him fold jacks? I mean, that's up for debate. Is that enough of his range? I don't know. We do definitely just beat some hands here. Even if their range is like built, you know, like this, we just beat some hands here. So checking, but betting is viable. Yeah, I hope that like this video's kind of illustrated the point that I want to make about building heuristics. Is we have to do like some of the work in like, you can't just like copy a solver output on like certain spots. You can, I mean you can, but like once you start to go down turn and river, you really just have to like use your experience and use any data that you have to kind of like adjust your strategy based on what the population is doing. So like here we're going to be against the range. We're going to have like against ace queen, king queen jacks. We're going to be against pocket tens. We're going to be against like some of the hands. So is this a good spot to bluff? Well, is this a good spot for showdown value? Not necessarily. We might. Maybe there's like sometimes like a hand like ace jack of diamonds or like 6-5 suited here, but that's probably just going to bluff on the river. So to me it's just like a spot we would just start bluffing. Now sizing scheme, I think it's like a pretty good play here. You could go like small and then jam the river, like you just have lots of bluffing opportunities on the river. With a small bet you could go 50. Maybe you want to like really put him in a tough spot with a hand like pocket jacks now, but like for me, I'm happy to do this. And yeah, we'll end the video here. I hope people have like learned some stuff.